Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast here on the littleshaman.com, brought to you by Transrelational Healing, shamanspiritcenter.com, and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. Today, I wanted to talk about something many people experience when dealing with narcissists, and that is something called analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis is what we call it when someone spends so much time and energy trying to evaluate the information in a situation that they can't come to a conclusion or make a decision to take action. This can especially be the case if the information being evaluated is conflicting, confusing, or contradictory. People who are dealing with narcissistic personalities are often struggling with analysis paralysis, and there can be many reasons for that. The most common one, at least initially, is confusion about what exactly is happening. Dealing with narcissists is extremely confusing. When you're dealing with someone who is not what they first appear to be or says that they are, a person whose reactions to even basic situations cannot be reliably predicted, that's very confusing. People can become stuck, for lack of a better word, on trying to figure out what exactly is happening, what's going on. While figuring this out is absolutely necessary in order to understand what has happened so that we can become unstuck, it can very easily evolve into something else. People can become mired in minutia, trying to pin down every single little word or behavior or phrase. They might obsess over trying to pinpoint exactly what specific set of labels applies to exactly which specific set of behaviors or words or people. This type of endless but really needless research can actually be a subconscious behavior that allows people to avoid facing the reality of and ultimately the ending of the relationship. The truth is that once we understand what we're dealing with, which is hurtful behavior that is not stopping, we don't really need to know more than that. In point of fact, we would ideally exit the relationship once we see that toxic and or abusive behavior is being repeated, whether we know what's causing it or not. Recognizing toxic and or abusive behavior is one thing. Staying in the relationship until we figure out what's causing it is something else. One of these things definitely does need to happen before we can take action. The other one definitely does not. We can figure out the why after we get away from this toxic person or this toxic situation. It is not more important than the what. Another thing that contributes to analysis paralysis here is that the situation usually presents too many variables, options, or potential outcomes, and these often differ from each other wildly. People can't understand what's causing the abuse or what could potentially stop it. They can't predict what will happen if they do X, Y, Z when the other person does A, B, C. What if it's because they've been drinking? Could it be because they had a bad childhood? If it is because of those things, would it be right to exit the relationship? If whatever reasons or inciting conditions could be changed, might the abuse stop? And on and on and on and on it can go into hundreds of directions and outcomes and variables. This can be extremely confusing, and it can feel extremely difficult to assess and evaluate the information to try to come to a decision about what to do in this situation. The reality is, though, that the only thing to do is exit if bringing this person's harmful actions to their attention does not result in any meaningful change. The idea that there is some other option here is a fantasy created by conditioning that it's your job to fix and manage other people's problems, or it's a fantasy created by the idea that there's some way to have a relationship with a person who doesn't care if they hurt you. There isn't. The phenomenon of needing to be 100% sure comes into play here too. We hear it all the time. This person fits all these criteria. They check all these boxes and they did this and this and this. And I'm 98% sure that they're a narcissist. If I could just be 100% sure, then I could know, then I could take action, then I could decide. To the people who struggle with this, let's ask a question. If you knew that you had a 98% chance of winning the lottery, would you play? Of course you would. 98% sure is sure enough. But the truth is, too, this way of thinking can actually be a trap because it avoids the reality of the situation. It makes the issue about what this person's potential diagnosis might be or how many boxes they check, not their actual behavior. Their potential diagnosis is not the issue. It's really not. It doesn't matter what their diagnosis might be. What matters is whether or not this person is willing to stop their harmful behavior, and you are already 100% sure about that. The answer is that they're not. This way of looking at it is often created by the idea that a relationship is salvageable as long as the person is not affected by an incurable personality disorder, and that's just nonsense. Any relationship with an active abuser is unsafe, and therefore it is not salvageable. Any relationship with any person who refuses to stop hurting you is not salvageable. You don't need to be 100% sure someone is a narcissist for this to be true. You don't even need to know what a narcissist is for this to be true. It's about this person not stopping hurtful behavior, period. Looking at the situation this way, first of all, is much simpler, it's more realistic, and it also helps cut through the cognitive dissonance that is so prevalent in situations that involve people who are not what they appear to be or who switch back and forth between extreme presentations of personality. Cognitive dissonance causes issues about what we're experiencing because what we see or want to believe cannot be if this other thing is true. That is why the brain looks for excuses, for lack of a better word. That way the behavior can be explained in a way that does not disrupt the things that are conflicting with it. For example, most people realize that if someone is abusive, they don't truly care about you. But if I don't want to believe that this person doesn't care about me, and or if I feel that there's some kind of evidence or proof that they do care about me, then I need to find a different explanation or reason for their abusive behavior, because both of these things cannot be true at the same time. Maybe this explanation or reason is that they drink too much or they have a substance abuse problem. Maybe it's that they're mentally ill somehow, or maybe it's that I'm causing this problem, therefore I can stop it from happening. This way of looking at it focuses on figuring out the motive and the cause of the behavior instead of focusing on the fact that the behavior itself is harmful and abusive. It makes the why more important than the what, and it's not. Again, understanding what happened is very important, but it is not more important than addressing the immediate situation of being in an abusive relationship. The why is not more important than the what. Most people do recognize that they're being mistreated in these situations. They might not realize that what's happening could formally be called abuse, but they definitely know it's hurtful and they definitely know they don't like it. That is why they're trying to stop it. That's why they're trying to stop this behavior from occurring. A problem that is all too common, though, is that people try to do this while remaining in the relationship. Focusing on a specific diagnosis or label for another person can result in analysis paralysis because it's such a subjective thing. It's not like you can look up a file in this person's head and see if they're a narcissist or not, or that you can find a list of factual reasons on a label on the bottom of their foot that will explain why they're behaving this way or saying these things. We can only go by what we see and hear, and what we know for sure that we can see and hear is behavior that doesn't change, even when we tell the person repeatedly that it's hurtful. It is normal and natural to want to find a way to stop the behavior from happening, but it can also be extremely damaging to somehow believe that this is your responsibility or your job. It's not. It is the responsibility and the job of the person engaging in the bad behavior. If they will not do that job, if they won't take that responsibility, you can't make them, and you can't do it for them either. It is what it is. People often don't like to hear that, but if you want the behavior to stop and the person will not stop it, the only option you have is to exit the situation. Let go of the idea that you can force people to do what you want. There's nothing else you can do. Needing to be 100% sure is also related to being afraid of making the wrong choice or the wrong decision. What if I'm wrong? What if it was me? What if it could have been salvaged? What if they're not a narcissist? What if they would have changed? What if? These things can make it feel impossible to make any decision or come to any conclusion because you don't feel like you have enough information. This is why people who have been in these relationships longer sometimes have an easier time walking away, ironically, because through the fullness of time and experience, they have become sure that the situation is not going to change. People who were not in this situation for as many years might worry that they didn't give it enough time or that they could have tried something else. The reality is, though, that in many situations, we cannot be 100% sure. We can't see the future and we can't read people's minds. In any given situation, we can only go by what we know at the time and what we think is best or right based on that information. The reality also is that what you already know about this situation is enough information to act. It really is. Would you buy a house in an area that floods every single year and just hope that for some reason this year it's not going to flood? Of course not. That would be absurd. Just like you definitely would play the lottery if you were 98% sure that you would win, you would not take a risk with such horrible odds as these ones in any other situation. This is no different. We want it to be different because our emotions and our egos and all of our self stuff are very involved here, but it's not. We're confused about the relationship. We're emotional. We're usually traumatized. We've invested a lot of time and energy into this thing. It doesn't feel fair that all these things happened. All these things seem possible. All this energy and time was invested. All this hurt occurred. All these emotions are involved. And even still, even with all of that, all it ever comes down to is, sorry all that happened, but this is never going to work and there's nothing you can do about that. You're never going to get what you want from this. Just exit the situation as soon as you can and move on. That's it. That's all there is to do. People don't want that to be true. It's totally understandable. Many people simply just refuse to believe that. But the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. You've already got enough information and evidence to conclude that the most likely outcome of this will be what has already happened every single time. And further, to decide if you want to take that chance considering the odds. And if you choose to do that, that's up to you. But do it with open eyes. Don't try to convince yourself that you're going to be the one who can make it work out. You won't be, because this doesn't have anything to do with you. The key to surviving this situation is to remember to focus on your actual problem. Focus on the problem you can solve, that you can fix. The rest of this stuff is a distraction from that. For example, if you're dealing with a narcissist, the problem to focus your energy on is not, why is this person behaving this way and doing these things? And it's also not, how can I make them stop behaving this way or doing these things? Because you cannot address that stuff. Since you have no ability to address this, it's not your responsibility to do so. Therefore, those things are not your problem. Your problem is, how are you going to protect yourself from these things? If someone breaks into another person's home, for example, with the intent of harming them, the first thing that person should do is not confront the bad guy to find out why they're doing this and or to try to talk them out of doing it. The first thing a person should do in that situation is get the hell out of there if they possibly can and defend themselves somehow if they really truly cannot. Trying to reason with a bad guy in that situation should be an absolutely last resort and should only ever happen because you could not succeed at neutralizing the situation any other way. Why? Because the chances of that leading to you exiting this situation without being harmed are much smaller. Much smaller. The priority in this situation is your safety, not solving somebody else's problems. The trap of analysis paralysis in these situations is so often that people are focusing on the wrong problem. And the reason that they're doing that is because they have fixed their problem solving on the reasons for the abuser's behavior rather than the behavior itself. Yes, they want the behavior to stop, but the focus has become helping/forcing the narcissist or other abuser to stop the behavior instead of just getting away from the behavior when they won't stop. The focus has turned to preserving the relationship rather than safety. Analysis paralysis shows up in situations where people are legitimately afraid to leave, too. They go back and forth in their minds about what the narcissist might do to them if they leave, and because this can be so unpredictable, if a person can't think of a way to plan for every single eventuality, they freeze and then they become stuck. The reality is you cannot plan for every eventuality, and you cannot control the other person's behavior, even if you could plan for every eventuality. It's just not possible. This particular situation often boils down to just plain being afraid, and that is completely understandable. The thing is, though, it's a false dichotomy because you're actually in danger either way. Staying in the situation does not make you safer. That's false. This is a trick played on your brain because brains identify things that are familiar as safe, or at least that they're safer than the unknown thing. This is not always true, and especially in this situation, it is not true. The reality is that most relationships with narcissists and other antisocial types of personalities involve some kind of domestic or family violence and abuse. It is what it is. Staying in these relationships is not safe. That is false. Leaving is scary, and that's a fact. Leaving is dangerous, and that's also a fact. But so is staying, and at least leaving has some possibility of success and something better. Staying has no possibility of anything except more of the same. If you're going to be unsafe no matter what you choose, why not choose the option that at least holds some possibility of some safety at some point? Finally, analysis paralysis is common in relationships with antisocial personalities like narcissists because there's so much gaslighting and narrative abuse inherent to these relationships that self-doubt and second-guessing become second nature. Not only are people confused about the narcissist and the relationship, they're unsure of their own feelings, of their own thoughts, of themselves in general. It is impossible to assess or evaluate anything when you are so busy trying to figure out if you're even perceiving things correctly or not, let alone trying to come to some kind of conclusion about stuff or make a decision. People just become frozen, unsure what to believe, what to think, what to do. Add to this the fact that you're just trying to survive each day, navigating a landscape created by an insane 2-year-old in the dark, and you've got about as much chance of being able to think clearly as a dog has of growing wings. Just not a thing. People get overwhelmed in these situations, and that is totally normal. Take a deep breath. Take a step back. Think. Look at what your actual issue is. Not the issue of the whole relationship, not the narcissist issue, your actual issue. Is it that this person is delusional and lying and abusive and cheating and all these things? No, that's their issue. Why is that their issue? Because they're the only ones who can solve that issue. If they don't agree with that, or if they don't think that's true, or they don't understand, it doesn't matter. That's the reality. Your issue is that you've got to be able to get through this without being driven crazy or hurt even worse. You've already tried to solve the relationship issues, and it didn't work because you're only 50% of the equation, and the person responsible for the other 50% will not do their part. You've already tried to solve the narcissist issue, and that didn't work because it's not within your ability to fix, and they will not do it. Now you need to look at your issue, and your issue is that you are not safe in this situation. Whatever solution you choose, make sure that is the problem that you're trying to solve, because that is your actual problem. Why you are unsafe doesn't matter right now. It might matter later, but it doesn't matter right now. Focusing on things like that is the privilege of people who are safe. And if you're not safe, then safety is the top priority, period. Analysis paralysis can be tricky because it can be sneaky. The key to getting beyond it is to make sure you're focusing on the actual problem and that you're looking at that actual problem realistically and reasonably. You can't know everything. You cannot control everything. You can't create the perfect circumstances a lot of the time. What you can do is what is in service of your own safety and your own well-being. If you don't, you will not be given a pass on the consequences, and these can be very serious. It starts with taking a deep breath, taking a step back, and taking a moment to really think. If you can do that, and you can, the answer will reveal itself. Problems can be complicated, but solutions are usually pretty simple. They're not easy, but they're usually simple. You know what you need to do, or you will once you stop and think. You just need to do it. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments online over the phone via Skype and Zoom for clients worldwide. So if you are interested in speaking with me one-on-one, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. I have several books in publication, so if you are interested in picking up a copy of any of those, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. I teach workshops, seminars, and clinics, so if you are interested in seeing what we're running this month, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. And if you are interested in joining our support group with access to exclusive content, weekly support meetings, and more, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that as well. You have been listening to the Meditations and More podcast here on thelittleshaman.com, which is a vanity URL for YouTube. If you type that in, it'll take you right to the YouTube channel. We are brought to you by Transrelational Healing, shamanspiritcenter.com, and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you. Have a beautiful day.
If you've been struggling through dealing with or recovering from an unhealthy relationship with a narcissist or other toxic personality, the Little Shaman has a catalog of over 500 YouTube videos designed to support your journey from discovery to recovery. You can also find additional resources on the Little Shaman website, including tools, courses, workshops, a support group with weekly meetings, and one-on-one appointments with the Little Shaman that are open to clients worldwide. There's even an AI chatbot built and trained exclusively by the Little Shaman using her work that can answer questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For more information, visit littleshaman.org. You can listen to The Little Shaman wherever you find your favorite podcasts.